new technologies are constantly being developed to complement current practices. That's in creating greener structures. The Green Building Council Convention, currently underway in Cape Town, is taking place, as I said. And joining me now to discuss this, Frank Berkeley, Managing Executive of Property Finance at Nedbank. So the title of the Green Building Council's motivation behind the conference is called Rands and Cents, as in SENSE. Right now, when it comes to the cost of building green buildings right now, Frank, does it make sense for investors?
Hello, Samantha. Yes, I think it does. I think increasingly so. What we found is that if you get a 4-star building, it's only costing you 3 to 4% more. If you do a 5-star, it can cost you probably maximum 10%. And if you think of the high operating costs that we have at the moment, with high electricity costs, water increasing as well, it certainly pays for itself pretty quickly. I think besides that also, that we just talk about cents, I think that's a bit of plain words, and so it's the money and it's the long-term viability of the building.
Because, of course, there are a lot of changes that are taking place when it comes to country legislation. South Africa as a whole making commitments towards reducing its emissions. And from an investment perspective, you've got King 3, so greater transparency when it comes to corporate environmental footprint. You've got pension fund managers that need to invest responsibly. How's the regulatory environment spurring demand and, I suppose, investment in green buildings?
I think at the moment there aren't very strong regulatory requirements, but what we've got is there's certainly moral requirements. And what we're seeing is a greater pressure, particularly from large organizations who take up buildings and need space, that they would like green buildings, not only for the fact that it's cheaper to run, but also for the fact that it's the right thing to do. And I think that's very important, particularly with the situation we have with increasing pollution, etc.
From a Nedbank perspective, is playing in this space, is funding green buildings lucrative from the financier's perspective right now? And how much money, in fact, have you put into this specific niche area in South Africa's property sector?
The economics for us are similar to any other loan. It doesn't cost any more to us and we don't make any more money out of it. But to date, we've lent over R1 billion into green buildings spread around the country that have been completed. In addition to the R1 billion that we've lent, we invested just over R1 billion in our phase 2 in our head office in Johannesburg, where we put a new phase in that was the first 4-star green building in South Africa. So certainly we consider it as viable for ourselves, and we'd encourage all our clients to do that as well.
I mean, one of the benefits when it comes to the investment perspective, and of course the property investor, is the fact that you've got high rental rates, which can be achieved. That's what you're seeing in countries like Australia and the US, 5 to 6% high rental rates. Is that something that's taking place here in South Africa when it comes to renting out green buildings?
I think there's a mix. At the moment, it's hard to say whether there's 5% higher than a comparable building, because generally these are brand new buildings, they're A-grade buildings, so they would command a premium rental. I think the real thing in time, as we get more and more of them in areas where we have some older buildings that aren't green, we'll have a better base on which to compare. But even if there is a slight premium, it's usually offset by the lower operating costs that we would have in such a building.
Of course, the cost to build a new green building is seen as a lot lower when you compare it to altering buildings that are already existing right now and current infrastructure, which is seen as highly energy intensive, perhaps very inefficient. What's the comparison between those two costs, the new building cost and then the alterations of current buildings?
It's very hard to compare directly because you don't know what's in the old building. If you try and renovate a building and you try and bring it, essentially you might need an entire new plumbing system, because a lot of these buildings have got grey water plumbing, so some of the water is recycled. Not the drinking water, but certainly water that goes into the sewage and to the toilets is often recycled. So the cost can be very high to turn a conventional old building into a green building. So it really is, the real benefits come in on the new building. But that's not to say that some of the old buildings can't be converted. Depending how they were built and where the services are, it certainly can be done. But it's very hard to say that it's a certain percentage.
And of course, Frank, from a construction perspective, taking into account all the players along that supply chain, of course, architects, engineers, and the construction companies specifically, how far away are we from green buildings being mainstream in South Africa?
I think we're moving towards it quite quickly, Samantha, because if we see the attendance at the Green Building Convention, It's only been running for a few years, and the number of delegates has risen astronomically. I think probably we have this year, I haven't seen the latest numbers, but probably around 1,000 delegates. So it really has taken off very quickly. There's a massive amount of interest in it from all the professions, and I think the suppliers too understand that this is the future of construction. I expect it to snowball as we go along.